All right, it is the top of the hour, so let's go ahead and get started. Before jumping into introductions, just a couple of house cleaning items here. This webinar is being recorded, so if you have to step out for any part of it, if you're joining late, this will be recorded and we'll be sharing it with all the registrants and attendees afterwards. Please make this as interactive as possible. If you're in Zoom, or if you're on LinkedIn, you can ask questions. Those will be routed to the speakers, and we will be able to address those. As much fun as it is talking to a blank monitor, it's great when we know that there's relevant questions that we can answer and get to all of you on that one. We will be referencing other resources. So if there are any of those things, just know that we'll provide all those links after the webinar as well. With that being said, let's go ahead and get started. We'll just start with some quick introductions. Myself, I'm Chris Hagum. I'm the VP of Marketing here at Wallarm, and my colleague, Tim Ebers, he's our field CTO and VP of Customer Engineering. He actually is very much like many of you. He's helped build these programs at a number of very, very large organizations across airlines industry and retail, and actually became a customer first of Wallarm and then ended up joining us. So Tim, thank you for making the time to share your perspective and kind of walk through the platform today.
No problem.
All right. With that said, what I'd like to do is kind of just set a little context, provide a little bit of background behind who Wallarm is and why we're a critical piece of the API security ecosystem, explain a little bit about the problems that we're seeing today, and then we'll jump into the platform so you can see for yourself really how the platform works. But if you look at the slide here, the real North Star for API security programs is stopping attackers in real time. There are so many tools and services that are available to you to help find problems, but at the end of the day, if we're not fixing those problems, we're just kicking the can down the road. So how do we go through and make sure that we are actually blocking malicious and nefarious traffic? Let's talk a little bit about who Wallarm is. First and foremost, we've been around for quite a long time. The company was founded in 2016. It's a group of ethical hackers that came out of Y Combinator, and arguably has done some of the most to help shape the API security space as it stands today. The company has patents on our AI ML-based threat detection. We've been longtime contributors and sponsors of the OWASP Foundation. If you are familiar with OWASP, they have the OWASP Top 10, which are the top 10 web traffic threats, the OWASP API Top 10. They now have the OWASP LLM Top 10, and now the new Business Logic Top 10, where we are actually one of the authors of it. We've developed open source API security tools that have been used billions of times by the security community. We have a large engineering team that's just dedicated to pioneering new API security features. And if you look, at some of the words and the logos and stuff like that, it's more the fact that we have been at enterprise scale deployments in many of these organizations for 5+ years. And that's longer than most of the other competitors in the space have even been operating. So we do have a long and successful track record here, and it continues to become more and more critical. And I think the next area that I want us to drive to now is, why is API security important and why now? You've probably heard about it for quite some time, but if you look at the Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency, they release their known exploitable vulnerabilities, or their KEV catalog, every year. And when we look at 2023 to 2024, we'll notice that of the known exploitable vulnerabilities, the amount that are API related have jumped tremendously. It's gone up 150% year over year when we compare the totality of 2024 to that of 2023. It's becoming a much more critical issue. And now API security is something that we can't ignore any further. Also to the point is, when you look at AI vulnerabilities, we've seen that jump up significantly by over 1,000%. Now, I know AI and APIs aren't necessarily the same thing, but when you dig a little deeper, it's very, very important to note that as you are investing in AI systems or agentic AI, that the vulnerabilities that are associated with them are almost exclusively API related. When you look at the totality of it, 98.9% of AI vulnerabilities are all API related. The vast majority are directly API related, meaning that there are weak authentication mechanisms, inadequate rate limiting, or broken access controls. And then the second large component are those that are indirectly API related, which are vulnerabilities that are compromising the integrity of your systems by compromises in your single sign-on or other data retrieval systems. So if AI security is on your roadmap, know that that overlaps almost entirely with your API security initiatives. That's why now is the right time to be thinking about API security if you haven't already implemented and set up a new API security um, uh, uh, you program in your organization. This is actually based on a lot of research that we do. One other piece of research that I want to highlight for you is to kind of the impact of the why now is at the end of calendar year 2024, we released a honeypot report where we put out um, uh, you know decoy systems, if you will, that we knew would be compromised if they were found, and we wanted to see how long it would take for these APIs to get sniffed out. And we realized that on average, it took only 29 seconds. So it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when APIs get found in your environment. The QR code's there. Again, we can send a link to this report afterwards. But if there's so much as an API that has some of its security settings changed or deployed without following your standard protocols, it will be found and exploited very, very quickly if you don't have the proper security controls in place. So how does Wallarm help with these things? Well, when you look at the challenges that you have today, when you look at your environment, there's kind of three sets of tools most organizations have. You have your traditional WAFs, you have your API gateways, and maybe you've invested in a standalone API security solution. Regardless of what you have, though, it's important to note that none of those are able to block API attacks in real time. When you look at a WAF, it's great for web traffic. We love WAFs. We partner and integrate with a lot of them, but they're not API specific and they miss a lot of the API attacks. When you look at API gateways, again, these are our partners as well. They're great management tools, but they only have basic authentication and authorization. They do not detect and block attacks in real time. And some of the other API security solutions by default are just observability tools. It's very complex to give them any type of enforcement arm. They're very difficult to maintain that way because they typically prefer to be deployed out of band. The way that we talk about this internally is it's kind of like having a Ring doorbell without a door. It's not a lot of security value when you're just being alerted when bad things are happening if you're not able to stop it. And that's where Wallarm really specializes. Is how are we able to accurately detect bad behavior and stop it from happening to ultimately not compromise the integrity of your systems. So here's how people typically use us. And this is something that Tim will be talking about in just a little bit when he does his demo. Most of the time, people come to us for one of these three reasons or multiple of these three reasons. The first is lack of API security posture management. Maybe they don't know how many APIs they have. But more importantly, not knowing the number of APIs is not knowing what those APIs are communicating with or what sensitive data they may have access to. Giving you that visibility is critically important as step one. Step two is, all right, now that we have visibility, where's their bad behavior and how do we stop it from happening? So there are many organizations that leverage Wallarm for remediation, mitigation, and most importantly, prevention capabilities. And finally, a solution that we rolled out last year is an API SOC as a service. For many security teams that we talk to, they don't have large headcounts where they can just dedicate full-time employees to checking every single alert or dealing with a lot of that noise. Fortunately, Wallarm doesn't generate a lot of noise, but also we have an API SOC as a service where we can be an extension of your team and help escalate issues that are actually serious for your environment so your security team can remain proactive in other areas of the business. Let's quickly just look at kind of how to think about Wallarm. So we are a platform here that works with all the different types of protocols of your APIs. We offer a broad set of features and capabilities from discovery, bot prevention, leak detection. We deal with the OWASP API top 10. There's all kinds of methods of deployment, and Tim will get into this in just a little bit. Because we're an API platform, you can imagine we work really well via API, and we can connect with all your other tools and systems. And finally, we have a tremendous number of very capable service teams that can help you do everything from getting stood up to helping maintain that, and then also the SOC as a service, as I mentioned. Wanted to just set that context here before we move over to a demo with Tim. So hopefully you guys have a little understanding of who Wallarm is and why API security is so critical today. Let's hand it over to you now, Tim, and you can kind of walk us through the platform and show us what it looks like.
Thanks, Chris. And I'll apologize now for my voice. I'm just getting over a cold. So as Chris said, there's lots of places that we can help you and your organization stop real-time attacks. But the first thing you have to know is, where are all the places that I could get attacks? And that is where we start our journey here. And that's API attack surface management. So attack surface management we built last year because we had so many customers going, I don't know where my APIs are to even understand them. As Chris said, I was a former customer. I said that all the time. We give out subdomains to marketing firms to create microsites back in the day, and we'd have no idea what their security posture was, and they were collecting customer information. So this product scans your external surfaces. You give us the root domains or the domains of your environment, and then we'll go through and we will look for different factors in each of those particular subdomains. So let's start out with this one. It's a good one to start out with. So we found HTML web, we found JSON RPC, we found GraphQL, and we found OData on this particular endpoint. And we've also found that it's not very secure. So we'll actually send non-malicious requests against those domains to be able to give you an understanding of if we're seeing bypasses or if they're blocking our attacks. And then if there are security issues, you'll see those as well. So here you'll see this CVE. This CVE is an Atlassian CVE. It tells you if exploits exist very quickly, if it's in the wild, and the like. So what this does is it gives you a single place where you can go and look to see how important it is to fix or block this particular type of attack. We also give you the full request and response data so that you can look at this and do it yourself, or look at the responses and see what it did, and then compare them if you do it yourself. We'll give you statistics around all the different security issues for those particular domains. And then as we see security vendors, we try to outline those as well. Another great thing that we can do is actually give you a report. So this particular report, it looks at your particular API to see, or that endpoint or domain to see exactly where you compare with everything else. So some of these were blocked, which is great. Some of the false positives weren't there. So you can see that accordingly in the score. So all of our false positives that we sent at it, it blocked all of those, which isn't good. But it did pass most of the API security attacks and some of the app security attacks. So we'll grade that for you and put that in here. So it's easy for you to see what you need to go after. And that's really the important thing about this is, where do I start? We have a lot of customers say, where do we start on our API security journey? And this is a great way to look at and to help you understand how to go to management and go look at our portfolio of all of the things that we're doing and look at either how good or how bad we are doing. So we need money, time, and resources. So from here, we have a number of different ways, as Chris said, how we can deploy. It's basically we have two different implementation models. One is a reverse proxy, and the other one is kind of a way that you can send requests and responses to it, and it matches it up. So for instance, for TCP mirroring or for pool mirroring, you can use our what we call our native node, and that will take and match up the requests and the responses together. So that's a good way to do out of band. We typically like to do in band. That's how we can block attacks, and we'll show you that. We'll show you that here. So this is our API sessions product. Here you can look to see what kind of attacks we're having. So this particular one had some cred stuffing in it. And so this user had a particular password that's been compromised at some point in the past. And so we have a database of billions of passwords that have been breached at some point, and then we compare passwords to that and tell you if this particular password's been compromised. Us, unlike most of our competitors, we don't send your data to our cloud. We only send metadata and the data that we believe is most pertinent to you. So for this particular case, the password that we're comparing actually compares at the filtering node. So wherever that filtering node is where that data stays. And we have ways to mask that data as well, depending on how sensitive you are for if you see a false positive in our product. So other types of attacks that we can look at is our API abuse. Our API abuse product looks at the activity of requests. So in this case, I call these stateful attacks, where you need to understand the session, you need to understand the information around the particular customer to understand if it's an attack or not. And for this particular attack, we have bad user agents, business logic, outdated browsers, request intervals, request rates. So all of these detectors went off, and then added it to the suspicious API activity. If you'd like to see an overview of all the different detectors that can go off, this is a graph and kind of a chart. We call it the piano chart because it kind of looks like chords to talk about which detectors actually went off. And so these are all the things that we're looking for. We add to these all the time. I know in the past couple months, we've added many of these detectors here on the bottom. And then you can click over and see which IPs are associated with that. So back to API sessions, we're looking at all the blocked attacks. And in these attacks, what we can do is we can look at and see what the API risk is for that particular attack. And then we can explore that in API discovery to look for any of the data that happens to be in there. And in this data, you can set it up by risk. Those risks are configurable. And you can set them up for each of the 6 different ways that we can do it, that we can look for risk and then sort by those. So all of the risky things should bubble up to the top. You can see this one actually has a vulnerability around it, and it's a shadow API. And so in API discovery, you can see all the different request headers and parameters that might be there. This one happens to be a GET, so you won't see any posts in there. Let's look at, or any data in the request. So let's look at this one. So this particular endpoint has an active vulnerability, which isn't good. We've got activity on it. And if this particular API was compromised, they could possibly get user some ratings information, but the biggest one here, as you can see with our sensitive data here, is possibly user IDs because they're being used in that particular endpoint.
Can you talk a little bit about some of the sensitive data there? I think on the API security side of things, you can see a bunch of the different iconography under sensitive data. I know that different businesses may have different types of sensitive data. So can you show some of the folks here on the webinar, how we go through and detect that and how they can weight it according to their business?
Yeah, so all of our sensitive data is based on patterns and context words. So patterns are for the values, and context words are for the requests. And we just go through and you can score them, which ones are mandatory, and if they're there, how we what score they get, and if they're not, what score they get. And so these are the ones that we see that we do automatically. You can add your own if you'd like. You can create your own new. You can create your own new category if you want to create a uh, brand new type. We can do that as well with a custom type. But it's as simple as just putting in patterns and context words. So if people are worried about credit cards, we can just put in a pattern. And if this pattern is anything like a credit card, we'll identify it as such. If you want to put words that are mandatory with that, like credit card or CC or whatever it takes for you, we could add that as well. So I know in the airline business that I'm fairly familiar with, there are things like PNR that could be personal information depending on who you talk to. So we can do those types of things in API discovery, which will then show up in the rest of the product. What you will also see here is business flows. So what we are doing is we are adding categories for each of the APIs to understand where they fit in your business. And then based on those flows, we're able to, with our API abuse product, understand if people are doing things wrong or unusual in those senses of the business flow. So those are more about that in the coming months. But that's a very interesting thing that you can use when you're looking at sessions. If you have lots of different sessions or lots of different ways to log in, you can just choose auth and look at all the different sessions that have auth in it, rather than having to look for all the different APIs. So it just gives you another view, another facet to look at when you're looking at the data. Another way that we block attacks is with API specifications, or what we call positive security enforcement. These you upload your Swagger, and you can either do it from a URL or upload it from your machine. And then with these, you can turn on rogue API detection. So if we find something that is not in your Swagger or your OAS that you've given us, we'll let you know if those are rogue APIs that we don't know anything about. And then you can block or monitor based on what you have in your Swagger. So it's just another good way to be able to drive enforcement of endpoints and APIs. And this will actually, you can do invalid parameter input here, which is a very key thing to look at when you're looking at API abuse, is people trying to trick your parameter values by being inserted. So this is very important when you're looking at a good API security journey. I showed you before credential stuffing and API sessions. This is the configuration of it. We can actually add any authentication endpoints, and if we find one that looks like a login from API discovery, we'll actually add that into the recommended endpoint, so you can apply that as well. But again, this is just looking at passwords. The passwords don't leave your filter, or leave the filtering node. So wherever that filtering node is where we do the comparisons. We also have dashboards. I like to hit these last. So this is a particular threat dashboard where we're showing you all of the different comings and goings of the environment, where they're being attacked from, who's being attacked from where, if there's any CVEs that we're seeing in attacks. So we have great dashboards for that. Again, a dashboard for API discovery. API discovery, this will just boil up what you're seeing, especially with sensitive data. So you can go and look, and these are all clickable, so they'll take you right into API discovery. And then we show the most risky endpoints, so you can keep track of those as well, either by hits or by risk score.
A couple questions are coming in, Tim, not to disrupt your flow there. One
Well, that's
is,
okay. I need to take a breath anyway, so that's just fine.
yeah, take a breath and get some water. So one of the questions that we're getting from the LinkedIn live stream is, can you use it for outbound API calls like to AI vendors?
That's a good question. The answer is yes. A lot depends on how you're doing it. But I know what we used to do is set up internal domain names, and those domain names then would be proxied to the third party, whatever that third party is. So the answer is yes, it can be done. It just takes a little bit of time and effort. If you're doing that through an API gateway, we could sit next to that API gateway and watch those as well. So a lot just depends on what your architecture looks like. It's a great
Yeah.
question.
There's another one that we have, and I think it might prompt you to start showing a little bit about the API specifications. Here in the live Zoom, we have is OAS, I'm assuming Open API Specification version 2 supported for Swagger upload? If not, is there a recommended tool to convert from OAS V2 to V3?
Yeah, we have an internal tool that we can use that will look at what parameters are wrong and help modify that. So typically, I'll just send it to our support team, and they can fix the necessary things that are not working in the OS 2 to 3. I don't know that I have a recommended one. Everyone that I've ever used has always had issues, and so then it's just a matter of figuring out the issues.
Yeah, but it may be helpful just to kind of at least show on the specification side of things about how we can even do some of the enforcement of that, where you can actually enforce some of the specifications as well.
Ah, you mean here?
Yes.
Yeah, these are the 6 different ways that we can block based on an OAS document. And some people will do some of these, some people will do all of them, some people will do none of them, and they just want to monitor what's going out and know what if it doesn't match or it doesn't match. So we've got the ability to do all 3 depending on what's needed in your particular environment.
Yeah, as APIs come to the forefront, I think more organizations are aware of them now. It's about making sure that they're behaving in line with what your specifications are, and we have a lot of tooling specifically.
Yeah, the nice thing is with our API specifications, if you have, so I've had a customer that had both a mobile app and a web app that are on the same API, but based on different parameters that they're seeing from the devices, they will change what gets delivered or the specification. And so we can create based on the requests, very low level specifications for each one of those. So we have a lot of flexibility in how we do this. A lot of customers go, well, I don't have API specs for all of them. I go, that's okay. Let's look at the ones that have your most personal information in it from API discovery. So let's start there. Let's look at all of your sensitive data. And from here, if login is one that you really are concerned about, we can create an OS here. And then we can throw it over to API specifications and then upload it just for that one particular endpoint. Now, so that you can look at just that particular login. And if you have multiple logins, we can do that too based on domain names. So we have lots of different flexibility in the product. And we have the ability really to go fine grained with that.
Looks like you're doing something there. We got another question. Can you elaborate on BOLA protection and how the blocking mechanism works?
Yeah. So that's all over API abuse. So depending on our API abuse can be configured with different context parameters. We can pull out users and user type or type of users from emails, from logins, and then we can pull information maybe from your JWT, or if you have a card ID that's across an API, we can pull that out, and then we look for abuse on those particular IDs, on those particular context parameters to see if you have BOLA. Now, there's a number of ways we could do this. We have triggers with brute force. Those triggers can be set. We have rate limiting. We have that as well. And those can be set. And then we've got API abuse that will look for BOLA attacks based on all URIs. So if you have a URI that has information in it, we'll actually watch that by default. But if you have something lower level, like a card ID or a customer ID, we can actually watch that as well deep in the request body.
Yeah,
and then as we see that, we'll look for abuse on that particular identity.
Yeah, and so and just I'll mention it here too while you're seeing this demo in front of you. If you any of the folks on the call head to wallarm.com, you'll be able to explore the playground. We have a number of tours of this where you can come in and play with this data and check these feeds out all yourself. But if you have other questions that I mean, you have one of the greatest experts on the line right now. So if you have questions around your API security programs, how would you do X? How would you do Y? Can the platform do this, that, or the other? Please mention it now. I would love to be able to make sure that we're able to demonstrate those things for you guys live here.
So we do have a full list of security controls. We have deny lists, gray lists and allow lists that allow you to do things with IPs. We're going to change this up a bit this summer. This will change from IPs to something else. And because IPs are just too big right now. If you look at carrier grade NATs, these carrier grade NATs are every request coming in is a different IP. When we watch these attacks, it's just unreal what the carrier grade NATs are doing. And so we're going to change this up a little bit this summer. More to come on that. We do have a full set of triggers. We can create triggers to send alerts, to send data, depending on what you want to do. So we have a full number of triggers for that. We also have a full rules engine. This can be fine-tuning your environment. Typically, our support team plays in this probably the most, more than our customers do. We can do lots of different things with our rules. It just depends on what your needs are. Well, I don't think I have anything else, Chris.
Not to worry. Let's do this. I'll take the screen share back. We'll start. We may jump back to you if we get more specific questions around the
Sure.
platform itself. But you know, we are open Q&A. I can handle most of the business side things, and Tim's your guy for all things technical. Just as a reminder, we do webinars usually about once a month. We cover all kinds of topics. Our next topic will be hosted by our other Tim, Tim Erlin, VP of Product at Wallarm, really focusing on protecting agentic AI in this AI-driven world. So there's a QR code and a URL there. We'll send that out afterwards as well. But every month or so, we generally release a lot of new research, a lot of new information, and ultimately want to keep you guys as informed and up to date on the latest happenings here. I'll leave this up, but now we can just turn it over to Q&A. If folks have any other questions about Wallarm, the company, the products, or any of that, we can do our best to answer all of those in the remaining time. But if not, we can give everybody some time back for their day. Definitely appreciate all the folks tuning in across Zoom and LinkedIn and giving us some time this morning for me, but I know there's people all over the globe attending this, so thank you for carving time out of your day. I'll be looking at the Q&A in Zoom and also the LinkedIn chat. So if you guys have any other questions for us, please put them in now. We don't receive questions in the next couple minutes. Feel free to just send them to us via email, and we will make sure that we get those responded to you in a prompt way.
Hey, Chris, did we talk about our summit in Tampa? Did I miss that slide?
We did not. There is a summit that we are doing tomorrow, right? Tomorrow.
No, it's Thursday. So you still have lots of time.
Yeah, lots of time to get over to Tampa. Actually, every month we do travel around, primarily in North America. We've done a couple in Europe, but we do API security summits. So you can meet with our team live. We bring in customers, partners, guest speakers, and whatnot. So we will be doing that here. I think you guys should be able to see the screen here. It's in the chat that Brandon just posted there, but we do have the API Security Summit. If people want to be able to join us there, there's still some RSVP there. These are free events that we host.
Sorry for putting you on the spot, Chris.
Be able to see the screen here. It's in the chat that Brandon just posted there. But I'm hearing reverb, so I'm getting audio from something else. Great. Well, Yeah, we get to show a little bit of behind the scenes magic here for these webinars. All right. I'll give it one more minute, and if there are no other follow-up questions or comments, appreciate those that did jump in during the demo portion. Happy to answer those for you. If anything else comes to mind, please let us know. I'll be following up with you all later today with the recording and several of the different resources that we referenced in today's call. All right. Things are looking quiet, so hopefully that meant that this was informative and helpful. Wish you all the best the rest of the day and the rest of the week. Have yourselves a actually there's a question just got in. All right, Tim, you ready? How does Wallarm handle API calls which have native encryption enabled? Does it decrypt the body for inspection?
We do as a reverse proxy. We decrypt it and then we re-encrypt it on the way out if so necessary. But yes, we do layer 7, so we must encrypt or decrypt.
All right.
And we do that. So our product that we use for reverse proxy is actually just Nginx. We are a module inside of Nginx that you load. And so if Nginx will decrypt with the regular way Nginx decrypts, and then it will re-encrypt on the way out as Nginx re-encrypts. Just for completeness.
All right. Well, thank you all for participating and listening in. And we'll respond to any other future questions you may have via email, or we can set up a one-on-one meeting and you can meet with Tim Ebers directly. All right. Thank you all for taking the time out of your day today.
Thanks, everyone.